Hi everybody, Julie Lancaster of Lancaster Consulting here, and I'm so happy to be talking with you here from Kruger National Park in South Africa. It's one of the largest game reserves in all of Africa, and what seems very fitting to talk with you today about is performance or corrective feedback. I want you to think about this in the wild just for a moment, as I've got monkeys over my head right now. If you're a member of a herd of Cape buffalo, or you're a member of a journey of giraffe, if you don't integrate or give feedback, you can die. Right? It's adapt or die. We all know it's about survival of the fittest, and the fittest individuals both give feedback and integrate feedback. So as you're thinking about yourself in the work environment, I want you to keep that metaphor in your mind because it's quite poignant. You may not die in your work environment professionally, metaphorically, perhaps you could. So I have 5 ideas for you today as to how to really integrate this into your workplace. If you're not a supervisor, you can give these ideas to your supervisor or your manager to make it more part of the culture, because we all know that feedback is the breakfast of champions. And quite frankly, it's one of the most empathetic things that we can do, give one another and accept feedback in the workplace so that we're all successful together. So the first is this: when you get a new employee, sometime within the first week, sit them down and ask for them to give you ideas about what their strengths are and what their challenges are, sometimes called areas for growth. And what you're talking about is both technically, or in terms of their hard skills, and also soft skills, meaning their team skills or their people skills. If they're not quite sure, maybe they've never been asked that question before, give them some time to think about it and get back with them. And then pay really good attention. Take notes. Review it and discuss it once per quarter. It's a fantastic way to get to know who they are and also create a growth mindset for your team where people have goals. That's the first thing. The second is, I want you to think about where you fall on the scale of too nice versus too harsh. Perhaps you're right in the middle, and that's fantastic. Mentor and teach on that to others. If you fall on the too nice side, here are some ideas for you. I want you to remember that the idea that you have for some feedback that you could give to somebody, that probably won't go away. Avoiding is maybe 3% of the time the answer. If you think, well, it might be small potatoes, or maybe I'm being too sensitive or making too much of something, it's easier to say something earlier. It's easier earlier. So it might sound something like, hey, I don't know if this is even a big deal or not, but I just wanted to bring up X. Say something sooner. If you tend to fall on the too harsh side, there are ideas for you too. I want you to really remember the 5-to-1 feedback rule for healthy relationships. 5 positive interactions to 1 negative, which means you have to work really hard to look and notice what they're doing well, so that then you have these deposits in your emotional bank account so that you can withdraw from time to time, meaning give some constructive feedback. The third idea for you is this: performance evaluations. Typically in organizations, those are once per year or sometimes twice. If you don't have them institutionalized at all, start. But during those times, 3 things I want you to clearly remember. 1, no vague feedback. I can still remember one time that I got vague feedback, meaning there were no examples. I didn't know what the person was really talking about. Your goal with giving feedback is adapted behavior, sometimes adapted attitude. And so you need to give them concrete examples, which means throughout the year you need to take notes. Your memory is not as good as maybe you think it may be at those really important moments. So take notes, give examples. Also, no surprises. Do not wait. Don't say, I don't have time to talk with them about it now, and then lay it all onto them at performance evaluation. Talk closer to the time. So performance evaluation is essentially a summary or talking about patterns. And thirdly, ask them to do a self-evaluation. Sometimes all the feedback that you were going to give, they already know. So you can then seemingly partner with them to help them work on those areas. Next, another idea for you is at the end of giving corrective feedback, don't fall into the trap that so many folks do, which is the "I'm so glad we talked" attitude. Which perhaps it's wonderful that you did talk, because then there's greater self-awareness and understanding and you had good communication. However, the real goal again is behavior, possibly attitude, and then behavior adaptation. And so figure out, either you tell them or they tell you, or you could come up with it together, what the modification, what the adaptation is going to be. Secondly, with that, make sure you schedule or talk about a follow-up time, meaning, you know what, I'm so glad we talked. This is what's going to happen differently. Great. Let's talk about this in another week, 2 weeks, month. It doesn't matter. If you don't do that, it's very difficult later on, if you see something that hasn't quite adapted like you were hoping, to bring it up again without feeling like nagging. This way you already have a scheduled time, and hopefully you'll have the opportunity to say, hey, I just wanted to let you know at this scheduled time that you're doing great, and I think the issue is fixed, and thanks so much for working on that. And lastly, ask for feedback yourself. Some folks say, great, the more feedback the better, whereas other managers will say, I'm terrified because I don't want to know. Yes, you do want to know, because everybody has an opinion already. So make sure, let's say if you're only doing it once per year at performance evaluation time, that's okay. More often is also great as well. But I would encourage you to not do it in the same conversation that when you're giving feedback to the employee, because it could sound like, oh yeah, well, you need to work on these things. And so they say, oh yeah, well, you need to work on these things. Perhaps different conversations a day apart. If that's not possible, it's okay also. But ask for what they see as your strengths and areas where you could grow, or areas where you could support them better, or if there's anything about your style that they would like for you to adapt. And you're going to model non-defensive receiving of feedback. And integrate what you think is appropriate. If they say, oh, I have nothing to share in the negative, you're perfect, it might be that they haven't thought in that way before. They may be hiding something, or they may have worked in an environment that doesn't feel safe to share that kind of feedback, like there's retaliation. So first of all, make sure that you make it safe for them to give that kind of feedback. And also try not to let them off the hook, meaning saying, okay, I can appreciate that, you may be just thinking about this now, but I really want feedback so that I can continually improve myself. Why don't you think about it for a week, and at our next meeting, let me know your thoughts. So hopefully that's helpful to you. Enjoy your day. If you'd like to learn or watch more, feel free to go over to lancasterleadership.com. Thanks so much.